A new fiscal year begins, and a new state agency goes into full operation. From Capital News, Illinois, it's Thursday, July 3rd, 2026. We'll talk with the Secretary of the new Department of Early Childhood on this edition of Capital Cast. Hello and welcome to Capital Cast, a regular podcast of Capital News, Illinois. I'm Peter Hancock. Although your calendar probably says it's still 2026, the state's calendar rolled over this week. Wednesday, July 1st, marked the start of fiscal year 2027. And with that, the new Department of Early Childhood officially went into full operations. That means it is now in charge of a wide range of programs that serve infants, toddlers, and their families. Those range from home visits and early interventions for newborns to the licensing and regulation of child care providers and overseeing early childhood education programs such as preschools and Head Start. Previously, those services were divided among multiple agencies: the Department of Human Services, Children and Family Services, and the Illinois State Board of Education. But in 2023, Governor J.B. Pritzker called for consolidating those programs under one roof in the same way some other states had already done. Teresa Ramos was later named the first permanent secretary of the new agency. She's spent the last 2 years getting ready for the official handover of duties on July 1st. I spoke with Secretary Ramos on Tuesday, the eve of the official launch. I started off asking her what it was like trying to merge portions of 3 different agencies into one and what the unifying mission would be for the new agency.
I really appreciate the question, Peter, about how do we really unify these programs that have been in 3 very different state agencies for their whole lives into one agency. So yes, tomorrow, in a matter of hours, IDEC officially launches program administration, and it's been years in the making. Just for context, the governor had an early childhood funding commission that launched in his first term that set this agency as one of its recommendations. And so the work to think through and bring coherence to early childhood services for families and supports for providers has been years in the making. And the last several years has been really working to understand current program operations, to listen to parents and providers about what isn't working, so that way we can really lead with ensuring that we have a simpler, better, fairer system for them.
So how hard is it launching a new agency from the ground up as opposed to, say, going into one of those agencies and just kind of overhauling the way it does business?
I can only speak to what it's been to launch a new agency, and it's incredibly exciting because it's something that we haven't done before in Illinois. Other states have done it, and we have been really intentional about connecting and learning from them. We've had to start up, the backbone agency operations like fiscal and human resources, while we work to bring everyone together from 3 different cultures into one mission, serving families with the youngest children across the diversity of the state. So tomorrow's day 1, and we've been working so that way this will be more of a sunrise in this new era of early childhood service delivery rather than any sort of abrupt transition.
So we live in an economy now where, if you're a young family with young children, it's really impossible or difficult, to say the least, to make it economically, financially on one income. It really takes both parents working to make ends meet, which really makes child care an essential service. It's not really a luxury anymore. And so I'm sort of wondering how you view that aspect of what the new agency does, how it fits in just with kind of the daily lives of ordinary Illinois citizens.
Sure. Early childhood education is so important on so many broad levels. 90% of brain development happens before the age of 5, and the early childhood workforce supports all the other workforces, allowing parents to go and families to go to work, ensuring that they're cared for by a trained workforce. We know that continuing to build on the governor's investment and attention over the last several years will get us on a path to be the best state in the nation to raise a family with young children, because exactly your point, early childhood care and education is essential to our children and to our economy.
I read your agency has a budget going into this new fiscal year of about $4.4 billion. You have a head count staff of over 500 individuals. I know that throughout the process of getting this agency up and going, there were some in the legislature who were hoping that this new agency, the whole would be something less than the sum of its parts, that there would be efficiencies and savings from putting all of these functions under one roof. Are we seeing savings, or is that not really the point of the new agency?
It's a great question. We are at the end of the first, really the second phase of this transition, where we're about to launch into program administration, and we're doing something never done before, which is exciting. It is a gradual transition, which means as we transition from old ways of working separately to together, we know that there will continue to be work to do over the next fiscal year and years after to make that transition come to life. Again, a sunrise, more gradual. We have been focused on making sure that there's minimal to no disruption of services at the result of the transition, which means we are ensuring the current process works well now as we transition everything over, as we build for greater equity, greater efficiency, and ultimately effectiveness of our program operations, which will continue to grow and evolve over time. So the goal of the new agency is really to deliver effective services for the families with young children who want them across the rich racial, regional, cultural, and linguistic diversity of the state. And that's how we're going to really track our success over time.
Okay, out of all of the functions that you're going to start performing here, I mean, you're taking over like home visitations for newborn infants and their mothers, to child care licensing, to regulation of preschools. Out of all of those, one that seems to have been top of mind to a lot of lawmakers has been the licensing of child care workers and the amount of time that it has taken for people to go through the background check process and getting the credentials that they need to work in a child care facility. Is that going to be easier under this new agency?
Great question about whether or not background checks will be easier under this new agency. I think the answer is yes, over time. The new department will not become responsible for background checks until next July at the earliest. That's because, and we just passed HB 5099, which will allow us to go to the FBI for approval. That can take up to a year to go through their approval process, and then a year from now we will be able to process our own background checks. That at that time, what will also happen is that we will see, I think, both operational enhancements and improvements, but also the legislation that we just passed allows background checks to follow the individual employee rather than being tied to the center, which will ease the reapplication process for backgrounds, putting less pressure on the system. And that law takes into effect next year as well.
Okay. And along with the laws that enable you to take over those functions, there's also the very arcane and tedious process of writing new administrative rules and regulations. How far along are you in that process in terms of getting the official rules down for, let's say, who can call themselves a preschool and who has to be licensed or certified as a daycare center and who doesn't, who's exempt from it? How far along are you in that process?
Peter, thanks. Great question. I think I'll start by saying in the fall of 2023, when the governor announced this transition, modernizing our childcare licensing system was one and continues to be one of our priorities, which requires operations, communications, and legislative, to your point, action and action on rules. We just passed legislation with Senate Leader Morrison, HB 3595, which updates terminology in the bill, allows us to really think about, to move away from calling early childhood facilities daycare facilities, because we've heard for a long time that from providers that they care for children and not days. It decouples the background checks from the employee and the center. And then since we just passed that legislation, which doesn't start until next July, we will spend the next year rulemaking on that process, so that way we're ready to go come July 1 of next year.
So what have you learned along the way as you've been setting this up? Is there any lessons that you know now that you didn't know when you first took on this project?
Oh, Peter, that's such a good question. I learned so much. I think reinforce some of the things that we already know, which are systems are people, and to ensure that we have strong functioning systems, we support a lot of communications internally with all of our amazing staff who are about to transfer tomorrow, and the staff that have signed up to do this work. It also includes making sure that we are communicating with the field across the diversity of folks, from parents, providers in rural and urban areas across the state. I'm really proud of what the team here has done to listen to feedback and to turn that into actions, sometimes really big, like starting the whole agency, but really made up a lot of small actions that will equal over time a much simpler, easier process for families and providers to navigate.
That was Teresa Ramos, Secretary of the new Illinois Department of Early Childhood. And you've been listening to Capital Cast. Capital Cast is a production of Capital News Illinois, a public affairs reporting project of the Illinois Press Foundation, with funding from the Robert R. McCormick Foundation. On behalf of the entire Capital News Illinois team, I want to wish everyone a happy 4th of July holiday weekend. Until next time, this is Peter Hancock saying thank you for listening.